How are the Utah tight ends looking heading into spring ball? And the women's basketball team is hosting a game in the NCAA tournament. We're talking about that and more on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. I want to thank all you guys who continue to like, subscribe, and support our show on YouTube. You can follow me at JT Wistrcill on Twitter or our show at Locked On Utes. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the tight end position, how we think the guys are going to do in spring ball, who will be the breakout candidates, also grading last year's tight ends, and then closing with some women's basketball talk because, look, I said Utah will host a game in the NCAA tournament. They're hosting multiple teams that'll be coming in, and they're going to have a chance to host even more than that. So it's an awesome opportunity for the Utah women's basketball team. But we're going to dive into that in our third segment. As I said, we're starting with the tight ends. And in order to help me do that, it's friend of the show and UteZone contributor, Dante Guardi. Dante, starting with the tight ends, I think the first thing that's just a little bit of a bummer is the best tight end for Utah, Brant Kuithe, won't be getting to go in spring ball. I think we'd all love to hear how explosive he is. Instead, we'll be hearing how his rehab is coming along very well, which I believe to be true. I want to believe it's true, but I mean, we'd hear it's going well regardless of if it was or not. But well, it's a bummer Brant's not going to be able to go. But the nice thing is Thomas Yassmin still going to be going. And look, Yassmin coming off the late season breakout that he had, I think a lot of people are really excited to see what he can do over the course of a full season.
Yeah, I think with Thomas Yassmin, the main area of concern heading into this next season is just he needs to clean up his routes a little bit. I think those like
Mhm.
short intermediate routes, I think he kind of needs to clean those up because that's where we saw Dalton Kincaid make a huge impact. You know, those third and four, third and five situations where it's just get to the sticks, break out, just get a little bit of separation and make a catch. Like we didn't see Thomas Yassmin really do that a whole lot in the Rose Bowl, which is kind of where I expected that to happen. I kind of wanted to see that from him. But obviously, you know, the big play threat is there. He's got great athleticism and great size too. So I mean, the ceiling's definitely there for Thomas Yassmin to have a real formal breakout and not really just be a one play kind of hit him downfield threat. I think he could really evolve into a true tight end, a really good tight end at that. And it just comes down to if he's able to clean up his routes a little bit and just be more effective in those short yardage, intermediate yardage situations. And then going back to Brant, obviously it's unfortunate that he will not be playing spring ball, but I do remember during the season he talked about his rehab a good amount and how well it was going and how well the doctors
Yeah.
did and how committed that he was to getting better. And you know, this is a guy that has NFL aspirations. You know, I think when he first got hurt, he wasn't really planning on coming back to Utah. You know, he was preparing for the NFL. So he was really doing all he could to get back in shape. And now obviously he's going to be coming back to Utah, which is fantastic. I have no doubt in my mind that Brett is going to be back to his old self. You know, it's been a long he has a long time to rehab as well. Like that injury happened back in late September and he's missing spring ball now. So I think he's really going to hone in on just getting everything right and making sure that he's good to start the season. And I think he will be. You know, I think we're going to get that old Brant Kuithe and he's going to be the focal point of this Utah passing attack.
I absolutely agree. He's definitely going to be wide receiver one, or could say pass catcher one, but he's going to be the top targeted player on this team. No disrespect to Devon Bailey, who's also going to have a big year. I think we talked about the tight ends earlier last week on Locked On Utes. For the tight ends, Logan Kendall gone, of course, Dalton Kincaid gone. The only other tight ends returning who caught a pass for Utah last season are Munir McClain and Putu Tau. But when you're talking about Putu Tau, and McClain, they only had 2 receptions each. Tanili Putu Tau is a guy who came in a lot as a blocker. Munir McClain, also a big physical profile. I think he's another guy who good athleticism too, a redshirt sophomore coming over from Georgia. Well, a Georgia recruit that originally went to USC and then wanted to come over to Utah, seeing as how they use their tight ends. We know some tight end recruits decided that USC is better, but maybe Munir McClain's the kind of guy who realized that maybe Utah's the best place to grow and be if you want to be a tight end. But these are 2 guys. We talking about the physical profile. I already mentioned McClain, 6'4". Then when you're going to a guy like Putu Tau too, I mean, he's got great size at the position as well. I'm really optimistic about what both these guys can do. Yeah, Putu Tau, 6'3", 246. I think those are the 2 guys that I'm most excited about to hear how they grow in spring ball. Because let's say something happens like it did last year, where Dalton ended up going down, then it's going to be where Brant went down last year. Then it's going to be like, okay, who's the next guy that's going to step at tight end? I think the odds-on favorite has to be one of those 2 in terms of Utah's next receiving tight end.
Yeah, we saw Putu Tau block a good amount during the course of last season, so it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of evolves as a pass catcher and if he can just become a true all-around tight end, similar to Thomas Yassmin, but to a more extent. Obviously, we saw what Thomas Yassmin can do last year on the field. We didn't really see a whole lot with Pututau, so it's going to be interesting to see his
Mhm.
workload and his progression throughout the year. Maybe he's a guy that can have a Thomas Yassmin type breakout towards the end of the year and really just give Utah another downfield threat, another big play threat, just another threat in general to make this offense a lot more versatile. And with Munir McClain, obviously he's a converted wide receiver, and from what we saw from him last year, I mean, he only got a couple of passes, but I remember there was one. He had a nice little catch and run, had some shift to him. So I'm going to be interested to see what he does. And I think they have very complementing skill sets, and they kind of need to improve where each other don't really. I mean, I think Munir McClain is good on the receiving end, but has to clean up the blocking a little bit, whereas Pututau, great on the blocking end, needs to clean it up a bit on the receiving end. So spring ball is going to tell us a lot about both of these players, but knowing how Freddie Whittingham coaches up those tight ends, I have no doubt in my mind that they'll end up being all right.
Yeah, and they're guys, as we said too. I think a lot of what we're going to see from them is even more so important for the year after, when we're for sure you losing Yassmin and Brant Kuithe after this season. One guy Utah did lose last year, though, that was definitely important was Logan Kendall. I mean, what an unbelievable blocker at the tight end position. Everything this team wanted him to be coming over from Idaho, just an absolute mauler and mover of men. It was so much fun to watch him go out there, and especially when him and Braden Daniels were working double teams on the left side. I mean, either side he lined up on, he was just moving dudes, pushing the pile. There's a reason a lot of time that Utah would run to wherever he's at. And one of my favorite moments from last year is when he got to score a touchdown, because I just love seeing a guy who does all the dirty work get that moment, get that opportunity. You could tell how happy that made Cam Rising and all the other guys too, to see him get afforded that opportunity. So in terms of who's going to be the next Logan Kendall, I think a lot of people were questioning, maybe it'd be Pututau, we thought, but there was a position change that was recently revealed in a KSL.com article by a friend of the show, Josh Furlong, when he interviewed Kyle Whittingham, where Coach Whittingham said that Miki Suguturaga, who was a defensive end / D tackle in the Pac-12 championship game when they moved him inside a little bit, is going to be going from defensive line to tight end over. Now, I think the reverse of this worked pretty well for Utah last year, right? When you talk about Connor O'Toole, a tight end who then went over and joined the defensive line, that worked really well for Utah as he really grew. Was one of the best examples I can think of progression over the course of the season. Think about him against Florida. Anthony Richardson was having a field day targeting him in the option game, to then the performance he had in the Pac-12 championship game, getting after Caleb Williams and doing a good job against those USC offensive tackles. I think Miki Suguturaga is the guy who's going to come in. We already know how outstandingly strong he is. And I think he's a guy who, look, the coaches obviously really trust him. He's an incredibly hard worker. I think he's good. This is going to be a good transition for him, and I expect him to be kind of the main blocking tight end for this team. I think that Coach Whittingham Jr. too have a lot of trust in him, so I think he's going to be the new blocking guy.
Yeah, I mean, Miki Suguturaga was definitely not a guy that was warming the bench as a defensive
Mhm.
end last year. I mean, he was getting some significant playing time. I think he had
Yes.
three or four stops against the run against Florida. So I mean, he had some pretty solid performances as a defensive end. So I think with him moving to tight end or fullback or that Logan Kendall position, I think it says a lot more about the defensive end room and how much better they are getting and how deep they are. The fact that they are able to just put one of their better guys on the offense and just not skip a beat. And I think it just says a lot about the trust that Morgan Scalley and the defensive staff have in this defensive end room. And I think that they're going to be a group that progresses a lot going into next season. We saw Connor O'Toole have 7 pressures and a sack against USC, came out of nowhere there. I mean, that's
Mhm.
like we were saying, that's a converted tight end right there. So you can only expect him to get better. We also got Van Fillinger coming back. He was banged up a little bit last year, but he was leading the team with 6 sacks before he went down. And we saw what Jonah Ellis also did throughout the middle stretch of the season. As soon as that USC game hit, he kind of took off and started running and just was playing really good football, then unfortunately came down with an injury. So, I mean, this is a really deep, talented room, and I'm really excited to see what they can do. And obviously excited to see what Miki Suguturaga can do on offense as well, because we saw what a nasty player with that type of mindset can do with Logan Kendall last year. And I mean, if Miki Suguturaga can come in with a very similar mindset, I think he'll find very similar success, and it'll turn out to be a pretty good move for both sides of the ball for Utah.
It definitely will be a good move. I think there's one other name I want to throw in. This is a deep sleeper just because I feel like all the other guys we just listed are the more likely options to be there. But Isaac Vajas, a guy coming out of Pleasant Grove High School. I got a chance to cover him a little bit, a 6'6", 268 tight end. He is a freak athlete and a beast. Like, I just know from the high school days, like if he's a guy who I think if everything clicks potential wise, I wouldn't be surprised to see him rise up this depth chart. He's definitely one of the guys I look at and I'm like, man, I remember how excited I was when Utah landed him. So maybe it's not this year, maybe it's the year after, but I do think at some point we're going to be hearing a lot more of his name.
Yeah, I mean, and you just look at what Freddie Whittingham Jr. has done with these tight
Mhm.
ends. I mean, you just talk about the athleticism. Like, he found Dalton Kincaid at USD. I mean,
Yep.
he was only playing football for like 2 years at the time. Didn't play football
Mhm.
until he was a senior in high school. That's why he didn't get many offers. That's why he ended up at USD. Obviously, came over to Utah and did his thing, and now might be a first round draft pick. Obviously, Thomas Yassmin as well had never played football before. Big rugby player. All of a sudden, comes to Utah, a couple of years go by, and he's scoring touchdowns in the Pac-12 championship game. So, I mean, at this point, I have so much trust in Freddie Whittingham Jr. to just develop these tight ends, no matter who you are, no matter what your background is. If you're coming to this school, you are going to come out a beast. And I have no doubt in my mind that Freddie Whittingham Jr. is going to keep doing what he's doing. I genuinely believe he's the best tight ends coach in the entire nation.
I absolutely agree with that as well. I think what he's done has been absolutely outstanding. It's going to be fun to see how all these tight ends progress and what they do going forward. We're going to come back in a second and grade the tight ends from last year, how we feel like they did. Something gives me the feeling it's going to be a pretty good grading system there, Dante, but we'll
Yeah.
discuss that in a moment. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our friends at Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all of the fat and calories? Then you got to try a Built Bar. We're still trying to keep up with our New Year's resolutions, so make sure you guys go head over and get Built Bars today because they allow you to continue to eat healthy and not compromise taste. They're great for your New Year's resolutions if you're still trying to keep up with them, or if you're just trying to get started and trying to lose some weight while not compromising taste. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievably great flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. What's even better is they are healthy, only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Smith's or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Smith's or Sam's Club today. Grab yourself a box of Built bars. You can pick up a 4-box of cookies and cream, coconut puffs, salted caramel brownie batter, puffs at your nearest Smith's, or if you're closer to a Sam's Club, run and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. You guys can thank me later. Head over now to any of those places and grab yourself a Built Bar. Also want to talk to you guys about a new offer from UCCU. It's a perfect time to open a low-rate home equity line of credit from UCCU. Over time, the value of your home goes up. As you make payments, that balance your O goes down. The space in between its equities and yours, a UCCU home equity line credit can put that equity, to work for you, like finishing your basement or yard and raising your home's value, or paying off higher interest loans and getting out of debt faster, or helping with college or weddings, or peace of mind that comes from knowing you have a low rate line of credit ready for you whenever, whatever, and whenever. UC will also provide you with your very own home equity Visa card, giving you instant access to your equity. If you already have a home equity with another financial institution, just refinance with UCCU and save. To learn more or to start your application today, visit UCCU.com or stop by any branch. UCCU, love where you bank. So, Dante, moving in now, grading the tight ends from last year. I think first let's start with individual grades, kind of. And I think there's only one guy to start with when you're talking about that. It's Dalton Kincaid, 70 receptions, 890 yards, somehow was not named in the Mackey Award watch list. One of the dumbest things I can remember in a while. Averaged 12 yards a reception overall. 8 touchdowns for him on the season, made miraculous grab after miraculous grabs. His performance against USC is simply put one of the best games I have ever seen. Even games like the Pac-12 championship game against USC, just out there fighting, giving everything he's got to. I give him a ton of credit for that, but just so many games where even like the Colorado one, or I think about the Washington State one where he's out there clearly hurt, trying to gut it out and put the team on his back too. It was so much fun to watch him go to work and battle each and every week. And once again, I just can't stop staring at that USC game. 234 yards on 16 catches, just absolute domination for Dalton. And yeah, I mean, the only thing Dalton can get from me is an A+.
Yeah, I can't disagree whatsoever.
Yeah.
I completely agree. A+, max grade, whatever you want to call it. Dalton Kincaid downright deserves it because he was a stud. And like you said, 16 catches in that USC game, not to mention that he didn't miss a single target. I mean, Cam targeted him 16 times. Dalton came down with the ball 16 times. And obviously those 234 yards and a lot of those grabs speak for themselves. And like I said before the show, I mean, he could have just played that game and sat out the rest of the year and I'd still give him an A+++.
Yes.
and whatever. I mean, he was just so good in that game and so many other great moments, like you pointed out, and just being a warrior, putting the team on his back and just showing the country what Utah football is all about, and just so much grittiness and toughness throughout the season from Dalton Kincaid. And it was a blessing to watch a player like that really embody what Utah's all about and show it on the field. Now he's going to be probably a first-round draft pick. I saw some hype about him going to the Bengals. How fun would that be, watching him play football with Joe Burrow, T. Higgins,
Yes.
Jamar Chase. I mean, that offense would be loads of fun to watch. And I can't wait to see what Dalton does in the NFL, because what he did at Utah was so spectacular. And he made so many awesome plays, so many great moments. And he was truly what Utah football is all about, I think. He battled a lot of adversity through his time here, battled a lot of adversity to even get here. Like I said, didn't play
Yes.
football until his senior year in high school, took the FCS route, transfers to Utah, doesn't play a whole lot during the COVID year. The next thing you know, he's the best tight end in the country. And I say it, best tight end in the country, because he was not only the most productive, but watch the film. Like these grabs, these moves, I mean, it backs it up. He's the total package for a tight end, and him not being being a Mackey finalist, let alone not winning the award, is downright ridiculous. Like I said, I can't wait to see what he does at the next level, because he will not disappoint.
Absolutely agree with you there. So much fun to watch him. And you mentioned just big plays and kind of those big moments. That's one thing that made this next guy so much fun. Thomas Yassmin started out the season pretty quiet, but I mean, against Arizona State was one of those moments. I mean, one catch for 72 yards. Like that's like that. Whoa, let's remember this guy. He could maybe do some special things. You go against Arizona, he has 2 catches for 42 yards. The Colorado catch, of course, the USC catch, of course, and catching a touchdown against Penn State. All this guy did was make big plays. He had 300 yards, over 300 yards, 6 touchdowns, averaged 23 yards a catch. The only thing that's going to hold me back from giving him an A overall, A plus, I should say, he's getting an A for me. The only thing that's holding me back from an A plus is I think blocking wise, I think he did struggle a little bit, especially against like Penn State. I saw him get tossed around a few times where I still think he's not a bad blocker, but I just think that's one area of his game he needs to grow in, versus I think Dalton was a really good blocker too. But Yassmin was such a pleasant surprise. I think you do in the end have to give him an A, Dante.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the way I look at these types of things is, like, if you told me that Thomas Yassmin's stat line would be what it was at the beginning of the year, and he would make all these crazy plays and clutch moments, like I would give him an A plus, because I did
Yeah,
not really expect much from him at the beginning
sure.
of this year. Whereas even with Dalton Kincaid, like, you could have told me his stat line, I wouldn't have been like, I wouldn't have called you an idiot, for example. Like, that would have made sense to me, because
Yeah.
what he did last year just showed us everything. We didn't really know what we were going to get with Thomas Yassmin, and to see him break out and make some of these huge plays, obviously running over Kalen Bullock en route to a 60-plus yard touchdown, pretty much sealing the game for Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. The Colorado touchdown, of course, just so many awesome moments, so many big plays. And I mean, I might one up you here. I might go with an A plus, just because, like I said, I
Yeah.
mean, if you told me that this is what Thomas Yassmin would have done before the season began, I probably would have called you crazy. Whereas with Dalton Kincaid, probably not. I probably would have said, yeah, I could totally see Dalton doing that, because of how he ended the season before and just how much of a threat he was in the red zone. But with Thomas Yassmin, I mean, what a season! Just blew out all the expectations and more. So for me, I'll go with an A plus for Thomas Yassmin. Just another spectacular season. Just blew out all the expectations, like I said, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch him next year as well.
Next guy for the tight end room we're going to grade is, look, when you only catch 5 balls and you play as much as this guy next did, you'd probably be like, why in the world is he getting an A plus from you? But Logan Kendall, as I highlighted in the last segment, as a blocker, was everything and more this team could have hoped for. Truly one of the best blocking tight ends, not just in the Pac-12, in the country. What he did, and against Penn State too. A lot of guys on Utah struggled against Penn State. He was not one of them. There's a Twitter thread that's really fun to watch of him just throwing and tossing dudes around. He's just, once again, a true mauler in the ground game. I don't think it could have worked out any better with what he gave Utah this past season. So he's another guy. I'm giving him an A plus.
Yeah, the highlight of my Twitter scrolls during the season was just watching Logan Kendall just throwing guys
Yeah.
around, because it seemed like every week there was more and more clips of it. I mean, he was such a fun player to watch, and obviously him scoring that touchdown against Stanford was obviously fantastic as well. You saw the way that the team reacted to that and really just rallied around him, because he was a guy that put in so much work throughout the course of the season. Another FCS transfer, another diamond in
Yes.
the rough from Freddie Whittingham. Just to let you know, guys, know that he is the best tight end coach in the country. And Logan Kendall, obviously just a fantastic player, just really brought that killer mentality, and they call him the Rhino for a reason. Just watch the film, just throwing guys all over the place, made some spectacular plays in pretty much every single game, ones that just really went unnoticed. And I don't want this to go unnoticed, so I'm giving Logan Kendall an A plus. I don't want this to seem like I'm just giving everyone an A plus, but like, these guys truly deserve it. Like, this tight end room was so fantastic, and they just blew all the expectations out of the water. Credit to Freddie Whittingham, credit to just everyone that was a part of their development, because they were just fantastic. I think easily the best tight end room in the entire country. I'd say. I don't really think there's much argument there. I mean, Georgia was really good too, but I mean, Utah had so much variety, and everyone just did their part. It was like the Patriots when they go to the playoffs. They say,
Yeah.
"Do your job."
Mhm.
Utah football, their tight ends did their job to a
Yes.
T and some. So I mean, everyone gets an A plus for me personally, because that room was just so fun to watch, and I can't wait to see what they do this year.
Yeah, I'll hear an argument from Georgia just because of how good, obviously, Brock Bowers is incredible. Washington too, what he did for them as a blocker, and man,
Yeah.
he's probably gonna get overdrafted for his physical profile, but I still think he'd be a good player at the next level. So either way, but there is one other guy you mentioned, and yes, we are only limited to 4 games of him, but in those 4 games, it was incredible. And as good as Dalton Kincaid was last year, he obviously had the best game of any Utah tight end. I think for the second best game, I would still give the edge that a Utah tight end played to Brant Kuithe's first game against Florida. Dalton has a couple other ones where he squeaks over 100, but you think about that hostile environment that Utah went into the swamp, that narrow loss. Who was the only guy that really showed up the entire game to me was Brant Kuithe. 9 catches, 105 yards, averaging 11 yards a catch, scored the first touchdown of the season for Utah. Brant was an absolute warrior out there. His was already a strong route runner. His route running looked even better. I mean, to create the separation against those SEC DBs and just the safeties, the linebackers, everyone they were throwing at him was super impressive to me. I could not believe how good Brant Kuithe looked. I predicted going into last season that Dalton Kincaid would lead this Utah team in receiving yards. I ended up being right. I did not feel like I was going to be right after I watched that Florida game because Brant looked like he was in for another monster year. And it's one of the reasons I'm so bummed we won't see him in spring ball because I think he's going to be an outstanding. I think, yes, you could give him an incomplete grade. I'm just going to give him an A plus because I think in the couple games we saw him, he looked incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that opening touchdown was fantastic. Really changed the momentum of that game, forcing a turnover early and getting it on the board pretty quickly. And then obviously, he had that 30-yard catch too down the seam in a game where Utah just couldn't really get much going through the air in terms of chunk plays. And that play really opened up the offense, led to a scoring drive. So that was really awesome to see. And then I think another moment from that game that I don't even know if there's a clip of this, but I remember I was sitting up there. We were sitting right behind the Utah bench. And I mean, there was during crunch time, like during crunch time when everyone was kind of like hanging their heads. I mean, it was a tired game. Obviously, that weather was not ideal either. And Brant Kuithe was the one going up to every player and getting them fired up to keep on competing and keep on working hard. So, I mean, a leader, fantastic player. He checks all the boxes for a Utah man. So, Brant Kuithe, I agree. I mean, sure, the sample size was small, and I mean, who you can only imagine what he would have done if he played a full season. You know, that's what I'm trying to say. You can only imagine because we've seen what he's been doing since 2019, 2018. I mean, he's been a focal point of this offense, no matter who's playing quarterback. Tyler Huntley, Jake Bentley, Cam Rising. Doesn't matter who's playing quarterback. Brant Kuithe is going to perform, and I fully believe that he will this year as well.
Absolutely agree with you. So yeah, only one grade you can give for the tight end group as a whole has to be an A plus for me overall. And it's going to be fun to see what this group can do next year. We're going to come back in a moment and talk about what the women's basketball team has a chance to do as they are officially tournament bound and a 2 seed in a second. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. They can bet on everything from money line to the points scored and threes drained. It also lets you combine your bets for a bigger payout with the same game parlay. You can do things like 2 times 3 points, 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes of the games, the money line, the spread, player props like points, rebounds, assists. It's all available at FanDuel. So don't miss this chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you get to go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. It's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment matter more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Also want to talk to you guys about our friends at RC Wiley. With RC Wiley, they are hiring right now, and it's a great opportunity for you guys because they're hiring delivery drivers in the Salt Lake area. If you're looking for a rewarding career with a great group of people, come for work for RC Willie, Utah's largest home furnishing store. RC Willie is currently hiring for delivery drivers at their largest warehouse by the Salt Lake Airport. Delivery drivers are the face of RC Willie, and they're looking for great delivery drivers in the northern Utah area. Compensation for delivery drivers is $24 an hour during training, and our average delivery driver makes $50,000 to $80,000 per year. RC Willie offers a $1,000 sign-on bonus and hands-on training, including CDL training, but no CDL is required right away. Many of their employees have been with them for over 20 years. With a modern fleet of delivery trucks, RC Willie prides themselves on going the extra mile for their customers and employees. Come make a difference and join America's home furnishing store of choice. Apply online at rcwillie.com/jobs. Last thing we want to want to tell you guys about too is the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown. With national analysts and the insights from our local experts, Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown has everything you need to know to make the most informed decisions on your bracket. Find the episode on Locked On College Basketball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Would love to hear in your comments too who you guys are rolling with for your brackets. I'm feeling a little biased. I rolled with UCLA, just feeling that Pac-12 love, especially walking Jaime Jaquez do what he. I thought that was incredible. Dante, real quick, who are you going with in your bracket?
I want UCLA to win personally. As much as I really dislike UCLA because of the whole Big Ten thing, I mean, I love watching Tiger Campbell and Jaime Jaquez play, and they didn't sign up to play for a Big Ten team. You know, they signed up to play for the pride of the Pac-12 in college basketball, which is UCLA. They got all the banners, and watching those two just progress since they came in and as freshmen has been so fun to watch. And I would love it to see them go out with a bang and win it all. But personally, I'm going with Houston. They've been my team all year. I picked them to win it really early. They haven't really given me a reason not to. I know Marcus Sasser's a little bit banged up. That's their guy, but I do think he comes back, and I don't think they're going to be given enough trouble in the early rounds to really make that loss significant until later on, when I think he'll be back. And I think Houston just goes on a run. That team is so gritty. So they work so hard, and it's so fun watching them play. Every 50-50 ball they're diving on, they knock down threes, they force turnovers. That team's a lot of fun to watch, and I'm expecting them to come out on top.
Speaking of coming out on top, that's exactly what we hope the Utah women's basketball team can do, as they are officially tournament bound and they found out where they'll be at, or I should say what bracket. We knew they were going to be hosting. We knew they'd be a 1 or 2 seed just because of the loss early in Washington State. Conference tournaments still have to matter. It made sense that Utah would fall to a 2 seed. They were projected as a 1 going into it, but the early exit to Washington State. I will add a very good Washington State team, who of course went on to win the Pac-12 as a conference, but Utah set up for their first game against Gardner-Webb. If they win that, they'll take on the winner of NC State versus Princeton. Should be another win. Then a really interesting game against, I guess Michigan, UNLV, Hawaii. Any of those could break through. I expect LSU to come from the other side of the bottom of that bracket. So I think it will be LSU versus Utah. LSU is a team that really interests me just because they're 28-2 overall in the season, but they really didn't. I mean, in terms of ranked wins, they beat. Let's scroll down and look at it because I had this up a second ago. They beat Arkansas, but that was back in 2022. That was their last ranked win because they lost to South Carolina, and they lost that one 88-64. Now, South Carolina is one of the best college women's teams I've ever seen, so that doesn't not a lot of shame in losing to that. But this hadn't really played anyone ranked all year. Now, it is hard to win, but I think it makes sense you see them drop to a 3 seed because then they had the narrow loss to Tennessee, but still a team that only lost 2 games. So I think that will be very interesting to see how it all plays out. If they take care of business, they'll see probably Indiana up top, and I think they'll have a shot to beat Indiana. I mean, look, Indiana does some nice things, but this is Utah women's basketball. This season has been incredible. There's a reason this program has barely lost any games all season. When you look at what Lynn Roberts has done, Alyssa Peely, what she has accomplished too coming over from USC, Jenna Johnson, Gianna Neepkins, the list goes on and on. Deja Young, like there's so many players we can highlight for this Utah women's basketball team. It's truly a special program and a brand they built. I really like their path to the Final Four, and I think they got a great shot to head to Dallas, Dante.
Yeah, they spread the ball around and they score and score and score. It's not the worst thing in the world when 3 of your top 4 scorers are shooting 37% or better from behind the arc. When you got 5 players averaging more than 2 assists per game, when you got 3 players averaging double figures per game. I mean, this team, they score. And in March Madness, you need free throw shooting. And this team shoots free throws at a 78% clip. Their top 7 scorers are all shooting free throws better than 72%. So, I mean, they score and they know how to close out games. So there's definitely a path to the Final Four for this Utah women's basketball team. They've accomplished so much this year. You already know that the chemistry is at an all-time high. The camaraderie is going to be there. The chemistry is going to be there. It's going to be a fun team to watch, and this is a team that didn't really have a lot of expectations heading in. I think a lot of people did expect them to make March Madness, but not to this extent, not to be a 2 seed, not to be hosting multiple games. So, I mean, the camaraderie is there, the chemistry is there, and the talent's there for sure. I listed all the stats just now. This team scores, and they know how to finish the game. So it's going to be really fun to watch them compete, and I can't wait.
It's going to be fun to see how it all turns out for them. And a reminder, it all starts up at the Huntsman. So make sure you guys get your tickets now and head up to support Utah when they take on Gardner-Webb later this week. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. Dante, big thanks to you for joining us on the pod. What are some of the fun things you're working on for UteZone as we draw closer to spring ball?
Yeah, so last week I came out with just a couple predictions for breakout players. These were a little bit more cookie cutter. I said Samote Pepa, Sione Vaki, and Leonard Barton. Obviously, we kind of all expect those guys to break out. They all performed pretty well last year, and now they're all just going to get more playing time. I mean, they're all going to explode. So I mean, I'm going to do one similar to that for the offense, but then once spring ball starts, then we could really see some of these lesser known guys and see what they're all about, which is going to be the biggest thing to look forward to, in my opinion, just for spring ball. Because I mean, we saw last year with guys like Thomas Yassmin, guys like Money Parks, who we didn't really know a whole lot about. Right. Yeah. Devon Vele. I mean, we saw a lot of these guys that we knew about. We knew they perform, and we knew a little bit about their game, but didn't expect them to perform to that extent. So I think with spring ball, we're gonna have a lot of questions answered in terms of who could be those guys to have that sort of impact this season.
Absolutely. And if you guys are in the market for a second listen every day, make sure you guys check out the Locked On College Basketball podcast. We're hosts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton, bringing you everything you know on and off the court. Plus, you can hear from big name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. March is here. The madness is set to begin this Thursday and Friday. For more help filling out your brackets, make sure you guys check in on the Locked On College Basketball to hear the latest reactions about the biggest snubs, the best games of the week coming up, because March is truly one of the best times of the year, and Utah spring ball is kind of the cherry on top we get on top of the madness that brings with March. So make sure you guys check out Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Thank you guys again for joining us today, and we'll be back with more Utah coverage on tomorrow's Locked On Utes.